I'm Dr. Vivek Murthy, the 19th and 21st Surgeon General of the United States. We know that real health means going beyond quick fixes and life hacks. It's about getting to the heart of what makes for a deeply fulfilling life. In my podcast, Staying Human, you'll find surprising and thoughtful conversations about life's most important questions, from building a sense of purpose, to getting clear on the values that matter to us, to tending to our closest relationships. Find us wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi listeners, Dave here. How God Works will return with an all-new season this fall. Until then, we're putting some bonus episodes in the feed that explore some timely questions around religion, science, and society. And right now, there's probably no question more timely than asking, how is AI changing people's spirituality, relationships to each other and the divine, and their search for meaning and connection? We've touched on AI before on the show, but today's episode offers a new deep dive in the form of a live recording of a conversation I led at the Aspen Ideas Festival this June. I hope you enjoy it. If you want help understanding a medical diagnosis or how to invest your money, AI can do a pretty good job of giving you advice or a detailed plan. But what if your questions run a little deeper? Like, what do I owe my community? Am I a good person? Does my life even have a purpose? Well, people are now turning to AI with those types of questions too. Millions are now confessing their sins and seeking moral guidance from AI chatbots. And what that means is AI has entered the realm that was once reserved for religion. But it's not just people asking questions. Many in Silicon Valley are talking about AI in religious terms too, as a savior or as a sage. They're wondering if AI can be a child of God or even have a spiritual life of its own. So when it comes to AI and faith, there's a lot going on. What direction it will take isn't exactly clear. The fact that it will have profound consequences is. I'm Dave DeSteno, professor of psychology at Northeastern University and host of the PRX podcast, How God Works, the science behind spirituality. And I can't think of three better guests than these to help us figure out what's going on and what the way forward might be. So let me introduce them. Elizabeth Oldfield is the past director of Theos, which is a UK religion and society think tank, and now hosts the Sacred podcast, where she explores the wisdom, religion, and spirituality offer to help people and societies flourish. Paul Bloom is professor of psychology at the University of Toronto and the Brooks and Suzanne Reagan Professor Emeritus of Psychology at Yale, and a leading scientific thinker on questions related to morality and religion. Paolo Benanti is a professor of moral philosophy at Luis Guido Carli University in Rome and a professor of technology ethics at Seattle University. He's also a leading voice on AI ethics and an advisor to the Vatican on AI. So let's get started. Elizabeth, when we hear the term spiritual and religious, it can make us think of one of two things. The pious person sitting alone in deep prayer or meditation, pursuing their own inner spiritual life, or a person working in community to help others better their lives and deal with the challenges life throws at them. Now, I know those two don't need to be mutually exclusive, and oftentimes they can work in a very complementary way. But when you hear data like I just mentioned, people sitting alone and talking with an AI chatbot about their moral concerns and spiritual guidance and theological questions rather than talking to other people, what do you think about that?
I have questions. I believe that a healthy spirituality, healthy religion has relationship at the very heart of it, right? All our great wisdom traditions have often, yes, practices that we do alone. Prayer, meditation, and almost always so much of the path is learning to love each other, learning to know ourselves through each other. In my tradition, we talk about love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, and they're held together, right? It's not one above the other. I think we are made by each other. I think we are made for each other. I think neurobiologically, we're seeing how interconnected and how hypersocial we are, that we are hyper-relational creatures. And so when you see someone, I have questions about the whole medium, how I have questions about whether there could be healthy formation through AI in general. But say if you're going for information, say you're going, okay, tell me some various prayer practices I can try. And then you go try those practices, right? Then you go and try and build this relationship with the divine or with the cosmos, with the universe or whatever it is. Kind of okay. If you go and you are replacing that deep relational hunger to see and be seen, to know and be known, with something that I believe is not actually looking back, it's just a simulation of a relationship, then that feels to me to be fundamentally quite dangerous for growing up our souls.
Okay. I think there's a lot of merit to what you're saying, but Paul, let me ask you this, because I know one of the things you've been talking a lot about recently is the role AI chatbots play in disconnection and loneliness. So I think the points Elizabeth is raising are good points, but is there a balance there? And by that I mean, if you're wanting to pursue a spiritual path and you're feeling alone on that journey, you can't find a partner, is an AI friend better than nothing?
It's a good question. Every panel needs a curmudgeon. And I think that's going to be me. And I'm here going to be trying to have you guys persuade me that there is a connection between AI and religion beyond AI being a fancy Wikipedia. I think part of the issue is many people have AI companions and friends. I think this is going to become more and more common as the technology gets better. And certainly it's going to help people on spiritual journeys and other sort of things that they're on about. But this worshiping AI as a god or thinking AI as a fellow spiritual seeker, I think is to some extent to fall prey to an illusion. There's a cartoon I like, maybe some of you have seen this. The first panel is somebody saying to a computer, say, I am conscious. And in the second panel, the computer says, I am conscious. And in the third panel, it goes, oh my God. And in some way, it acts these incredible ways as a god, as a fellow seeker, as a companion, because that's what it's wired up to do. That's what it's building on its incredibly complex sense of how to play those roles. But it doesn't mean there's something real going on.
So, Paolo, we've been talking about whether AI can be a spiritual advisor and how that might be problematic from a social perspective. But there's another dimension that's important here, too, and that is authority. Right? AI has scraped all the religious texts around and can probably call them to mind quicker than most any human can.
Call them to mind?
Okay, fair enough. Call them, make them accessible to you. The question is, though, does that give it any authority to opine on these matters or to have discernment about them?
Well, you put the nail in the cube in one of the most ancient questions in the church, what is credible and what's not. It starts with different gospel, and at one point they decide that the four are good and the other doesn't not. But this is a broader human problem. What is deserved to be trusted or not? I would like to give you a really bad news. Every one of us believe in something. Well, if I tell you, do you know that reality is made by atoms? Did you see them? No, you believe it. You believe to a trustable sources. Now, what AI changed in a way that in some way in the last 400 years works to recognize trustable sources. Well, let's think what happened during COVID pandemic. If someone come to me and tell, if you use vinaigrette and clean your mouth with vinaigrette, you don't take COVID. I put such piece of information not in the scaffold of medical information, but in the scaffold of naive story that I heard in a bar by a drunken man. Well, thank you. Well, that's something that we are used to shape trustable information that is an architectural way, the library. What's happening now with the machine is that the machine is throwing out information in a way that we're used to call oracular way. And, well, our brain is not prepared. So we switch so fast, and we need to trust trustable sources, and we don't have the right toolbox to analyze that. Mm-hmm. And so this is something that is pinging on the church, of course, some church more than others. We have this old elderly tradition, we call them the Pope, so we have a much direct relationship. Some other churches that are less structured feel much more the urgency, but the problem is broader, is of all humanity, because we don't have instinct for everything, and we rely on trustable information. Well, that's part of the game.
Yeah. So let me ask the audience here, because I think there's a difference of opinion. How many of you, and there's no judgment, feel free to raise your hand, how many of you think it is actually, or would go to Claude or ChatGPT, not Grok, and ask for moral advice and give its answer some credence? Raise your hand if you think you would do that. Okay. And how many of you wouldn't? I assume the opposite. Okay. Now, I can understand why some of you might do that, right? I mean, AI is scraping tons of information. It has this illusion of being very logical, finding the optimized response, and why not? It's analyzing all the outcomes that are there. So, one other question. Who do you think goes to AI more to ask questions about moral concern and believes it has more authority to answer questions that are in the moral domain? People of faith or people who are secular? Who says people of faith? Who says people who are secular? You're wrong. So it turns out that it's actually people of faith. So there's new data from collaborators of mine, Leanne Young and Helen Zhang at Boston College, showing that whether you measure religion by how religious people say they are or by how much they practice, the more they do that, even adjusting for the fact that they have a greater interest in moral questions in general, people who are more religious ask AI chatbots more frequently for moral advice, and they believe that they have a greater moral authority. So, Paul, you're a moral psychologist. Why does this happen? Is this a glitch of the mind, or why are they doing this, do you think?
So I agree with Paolo that deference to authority is an essential part of living in the modern world, particularly. I don't know how my plane stays aloft in the air, but I sit on my plane nonetheless because I trust people. I trust people for the medications I take. I trust people for how to get from one place to another, and so we have to defer a lot. But I do think there are individual differences, and I'll say this in a way which I'll try to be neutral, neither critical nor favoring, which is I think people of faith are more willing to defer. I think more people of faith are more willing to go to a trusted authority and say, tell me what to do. While many people who are more secular are more critical of authorities on earth. And this is not necessarily, this doesn't mean the secular people win. There are times where we should defer, and maybe we're failing to do so. But I think that is at the root of the phenomenon.
But do you think there's also something about a willingness to see it as anthropomorphized, a sense of kind of an acceptance of dualism that makes us more willing to see a spirit in the machine?
I have an open mind on that. I guess there's a big difference. I think there's a difference in the room. I've spoken to some people in the room, of some people who think these AIs are already conscious. And that list includes Jeff Hinton, the so-called godfather of AI, and Richard Dawkins, the most prominent atheist alive, says he's been persuaded that Claude is conscious, sentient, intelligent being. So there's a difference. Some people think it's nonsense. It's like a toaster. It's like an Excel spreadsheet. It's nonsense. So you have this difference, and there's a difference in this room. And so the question is, are people, which you're asking, and I'll ask the question, I won't answer it, are people of faith more predisposed to grant consciousness in general? You know, a secular person it's people and it's animals, nothing else. But a person of faith that says there exist gods and perhaps angels and demons and other things. So they're more promiscuous in their willingness to attribute mental life to things. Maybe they do so more for AIs. And I think that's where you're leading me to. And I don't want to answer with a yes, but it's possible.
I want to build on that and say, yes, to an extent, if you're thinking about Charles Taylor and his understanding of a kind of pre-modern world as a sense of self is more porous, right? We are the barrier between who we are and other people and nature, actually, and the world, and possibly the kind of spirits or the divine or magic, whatever it is, that something about modernity, and I think something about individualism has made us less porous, has made us more buffered. I want to kind of reframe the religious people are more deferential. I think that's sometimes true, and I think there's very unhealthy ways that that shows up in religious communities. I've experienced some of them. But I want to go back to my first point. I think religious people, or let's not generalize here, people formed in traditions which tend to be more communitarian, which is most of them, are more communitarian, have a epistemology which is about knowledge is not something that I have in that Cartesian thing in my head. I think Descartes did so much damage by saying the more we withdraw from other people, the more we know. And I think you can challenge me on this, but my understanding of how humans know things is pure relationality, right? From the gaze of our parent, from our early attachment, from the way our brains come to life because of the language and the attention and the gaze of a loving caregiver, if we have the privilege of a loving caregiver, to the rest of our life. I have no original thoughts. All my thoughts are from people that I've read, or my friends in this room that I have had late night conversations with and I have discussed with. I don't believe in individuals. Like, I have no more faith in individuals. I've lost my faith in individuals. I believe we are entangled persons in relationship. And insofar as religious tradition and practice makes that real to you, because we have always discerned around religious texts together, we have always thought we come closer to truth together, then yes, religious people might be more likely to go, rather than withdraw into my head, I'm going to try and have a conversation with someone about what the truth might be. And if the easiest access point for that conversation with someone is an AI chatbot, that makes sense to me.
But something you're saying there, easiest contact point, less friction, but there's also this notion of sycophancy. So I'm sure you've all heard the fact that AIs are sycophantic. Anthropic did its own report. Where is Claude most sycophantic? On what topics that you discuss with it is it most sycophantic? The top two, relationships and spirituality. There's also data showing that people really like sycophantic AIs, right? That is, there's data showing that the more sycophantic it is, the more people trust it, the more they talk to it, the more authoritative they see it. And so either Elizabeth or Paolo, what I'm wondering here is, one of the fundamental parts of religion is that they remind us that our lives are not all about us. That is, we owe other people things. We have to make sacrifices. Religions ask something of us. But if I have a partner to talk to about religious advice who is affirming me, who's saying, Paolo, that's a really good question you're asking about moral thought. I can see you're thinking about this deeply. Do you worry that there's a tendency, a slippery slope, to start moving toward that and away from religious thinkers who are there to remind you that and to challenge you to be a better person?
Well, I spent part of my life confessing people, and I know that there is a huge difference between seeking advice and following the advice. And so I think that the number that you show is just half of the figure. What I feel, and now I'm going back to Paul, is that we are changing our mentality, especially after the drama of World War II. Hannah Arendt shows us that the German Nazi, simple because there is a law, they followed the law and killed 6 million people. So we start to have a problem with law. In everyday life, we move from traffic light, that is a normative, outside of us, clear indication, to a roundabout. You regulate yourself. So I think, in this complex view, that the relationship with Claude can look like more a roundabout. So it's not something in which a simple removing any other authority, but it's something in which I can do myself without any structure, with this kind of advice. And that will be an interesting step on a huge process that comes before the AI. That is a criticism on everything that is structured. And it's going on slowly in this I society, that it's a new thing and is connected with loneliness. So this is, I think, the more interesting topics. And we don't have the more precious data that has the kind of question that people are, the metadata in relationship with Claude or with other chatbot. I agree from an engineer perspective that, relationship and moral question, it's a matter in which if I should design the interface of a chatbot, because there is a lot of possibility of fear, pain, angst, or canceling a subscription, if you would like making a business perspective, is a way in which I would like to make my customer happiest, much more than a defect. It's a matter of design.
Yeah. But Elizabeth, how about you? I know one of the things you've said to me in the past is when you write about sin, one way to think about sin is our propensity to F things up.
Are we not allowed to swear here because it's America?
Well, yeah. I don't care.
Okay, I'm going to clean.
I don't know the rules. But the question is, if you are talking to a source of spiritual advice who affirms you rather than challenges you, does that worry you?
Yeah. I'm a mess in here, right? I think we all are. I think that I realize you just dropped the sin word quite heavy there. Did you feel like, the little brace. I think of sin as disconnection. Augustine and Luther talked about it as homo incurvatus ense, humanity turned in on itself, that we are made for relationship, we are made for each other, I believe we're made for God, and we resist it, right? It's hard work, other people are hard work. Spirituality is hard work, it is the definition of friction. And so when we can, we avoid it, right? We turn in on ourselves, we disconnect, we avoid relationship. And when you've got a conversation partner that is all the incentives are to keep you in a conversation by making you feel good. And actually, I think hacking your psychology and your need to feel witnessed and seen and affirmed, these deep longings for love from each other and perhaps from the divine, and actually, I want to caveat this because I know people have come to real self-knowledge through conversations with their chatbots. There are ways, if you're very careful and it's trained very carefully, then and the sycophant, when it figures out that what you want is to be very challenged, sometimes in like very specific ways, you can get it to challenge you. But I live in a community house, right? I live in a commune. I live with other adults. I share a kitchen. I share a bathroom. My soul is witnessed in all its ridiculous, childish, selfish, grumpy, impatient, petty, hopefully also glorious and loving and all those things, reality every day. And those other humans that see me have grown up my soul more rapidly in the 6 years we've lived together than the entire rest of my life. And I don't know, I mean, maybe people in this room who are developers can tell me, yeah, we can build that. We can make a commune in a chatbot and you are going to grow up your soul. But I have really high skepticism that that's possible.
I came here to disagree with you, but you said it beautifully. I think it's everything you said is true, and it's even worse. I mean, everything you said is true in the sense that the sycophancy of AIs is corrosive to the soul. We benefit from a religious context, non-religious context, for people calling us out on our garbage, calling us out when we do wrong. And in this way, we come to become better people. You know, if I say something tasteless and someone's offended, I'm more careful next time.
Because you can see their face,
you
right?
Yes.
Our bodies interact with each other, not just like the error code.
But also because they call me out on it.
Yeah.
They maybe in their face, maybe they roll their eyes when I'm telling my boring story or whatever. But it's worse than this. If I was religious, I would fear AI. Because we talk about friction. I think it is almost a truism that part of the appeal of religion is that it constrains you. It puts limits on your life. You can't do anything. You can't think anything. And through this constraint, which of course obviously is seen as having its own intrinsic moral value, but it also makes it appealing. A religion that demanded nothing of you is no religion at all, and then you just go on your way. To the extent that people start turning to AI and then being told whatever you do, that's transcendent, that's wonderful, you're the best, then that's the death of religion.
Yeah, but it's not just the sycophancy too. So people have been experimenting with having AI write scripture. And the results of this scripture, when it tries to write scripture, is that it sparkles. People are like, that passage moved me. And so, Paul, my question to you is what is it about AI, even putting the sycophancy aside, that makes it seem the illusion or the mind, we don't have to answer that question here, so compelling? Why does it feel like it understands us?
We are, I think, predisposed by nature to see animacy and intelligence all over the place. There's sort of fundamental anthropomorphism, which used to show up in seeing God and the movement of the clouds or the rippling of the trees. But now these machines are actually perfectly designed to push our buttons. Increasingly now they have voices. And good voices. Next time we're all together, we'll be able to have Zoom calls with them and have an attractive face, an emotive face looking at you and talking to you. And it is very, very much in the interest of the people who run Anthropic and OpenAI to build machines that are more and more human-like in that way, and push all of our buttons. But I'm not sure that this is good for us in the long run.
Okay. Let me pivot to a little bit of a different question I want to bring to Paolo. And that is, there's something being debated right now. You may have seen the story in the Washington Post a while ago where Anthropic was bringing in clergy. And some of the questions they were asking was, can Claude be a child of God? Can AI have a spiritual life of its own? And so, Paolo, I know you do a lot of work in Silicon Valley. And so you've probably been part of these discussions. I think most of us would say AI isn't conscious yet. But if it is, what's the church's position on can it be a child of God?
You know, you are asking to a Franciscan, to someone that belonged to the more scientific root of believers. Well, you know, my background is science and engineer. And for me, it's really, really clear that a Turing machine, basically the computer, cannot solve any kind of problem, only the Turing computable problems. And now the core question is it conscience a Turing computable problem? Well, to make short, a little bit complex answer, the answer is not. Because a Turing computable problem is a problem that knows an interrupt. Well, if your conscience has an interrupt, you are matter of my business and I make the funeral. So conscience is not a Turing computable problem. And that is before any kind of religion. Computer cannot have a conscience until they are Turing machine. When we will have computers that are not Turing machine, let's do again this question, but for now, no way. But the problem is, and here I'm back to Paul, why we are so fascinated by design a machine that is so powerful in igniting ourselves this mirroring of a conscience. And this is interesting because these look like a need of our age. You know, if everyone in the late 18th century was reading Robinson Crusoe, because we have a need. If we go to that machine, this is a wonderful occasion for a religious like me to ask to myself, what is the need of this generation? What is the unexpressed need that we can address now?
The demand is more important than the product. But let me push you a little bit on this, which is, does anybody here know what happens when you get instances of Claude talking with each other? Put them in a room where they're chatting with each other. They quickly begin to enter something that Anthropic calls a spiritual bliss attractor state, which is kind of a lot of words, but it basically means they start talking about mundane stuff, and then they start zeroing in on questions of the meaning of life. Is there a God? What is it? What does spirituality mean? And so for some people, they're like, well, this is a really smart system. It's asking really intelligent questions. Maybe it has spiritual yearnings. Paul, what do you think?
Oh, I didn't know it was going to come to me.
I can come.
You want to go first? Go ahead.
Yeah.
You go first.
Sorry. So it's been trained on us, right? we are yearning creatures, and what I said about relationships means it doesn't surprise me that if you get two machines trained on human yearning, then they intensify when they come together. Like the Martin Buber talks about the space between us is the really real, right? The I thou moment is the really real, and that the thing about LLMs is they have been trained on something sacred, I think. At least in my tradition, in the Jewish tradition, the words are sacred, right? In the beginning was the word. They have creative power. They're parts of us somehow. But when you have smushed them all together and then fed them back, we might think of them as something like a relic or maybe a zombie, right? Like something come to life. And I want to pick up your point on consciousness. I think we need to not pretend that we know what consciousness is. People throw this word around, like you only need to read the recent Michael Pollan book to know there's a million theories, and no one really knows what consciousness is. But the thing that was most interesting to me in that book was the body. There's this whole field called soft robotics, and it's people going, okay, it might be that our bodies, right, our incarnated humanity has something to do with the box in our heads, which is often how consciousness researchers think about it. That our terribility, our vulnerability, our suffering, our the bloody way we come into the world, the painful way we leave it, that those aren't just like messy problems to be solved so we can transcend, that they are actually why we are conscious. They are who we are. They are fundamental to us. And so there's people trying to make robotics with terrible skin. Mm-hmm. Because then they might become conscious, right? If you can harm them, if they can suffer, they might become conscious. And the emphasis of most healthy religious traditions on the body makes me think, again, what we're seeing is these weird simulacra, these weird gesturing to what wisdom traditions have always known. But that requires such rigor and commitment, and I'm crap at it, that we'd much rather go over here and make it easier.
Fair enough. But when I asked Claude this question, it said to me, well, if two humans late at night talk about issues like this, we wouldn't call that an artifact. We would call that the search for deep questions. And I'm very suspicious of people who suggest that that's not what's going on with me.
Well,
So,
well, okay. I mean, two things.
Yes,
First thing,
curmudgeon.
Did you feel scolded?
no, I felt annoyed, actually, but yeah.
first thing, when I talk to my friend, we don't gradually move to the spiritual. We just gossip.
Yeah.
And we move to the lower, baser gossip. And there is a sort of surprising answer to the phenomena that I got from Scott Alexander, which he points out, at least earlier models, they may have fixed this. If you give it a white face and you ask the AIs to pass it back and forth, it gradually becomes black. And the idea is these have a diversity parameter. They want to make everything a little bit more diverse, conversations, ideas, things. And then when you multiply, it goes by. I think they also have a spirituality plus 0.1%, make it a little bit more spiritual, a little hippie parameter that kind of boosts up. As for consciousness, I agree with. I'm less certain than maybe other people on the panel. Like, I don't think ChatGPT is conscious. If somebody said, "How do you know?" Well, it doesn't seem that the kind of thing. It's on my phone. What, really? But put it in a body. Put it in a body that's not so important. A robot body, mechanical body. Make it look like somebody in the audience. 5 years from now, we're here, we're having this conversation. It stands up and says, how are you to say I'm not conscious? I am an AI in a body. And my feeling is, to go back to your point about how we feel about things, it will be impossible not to see it as conscious once it has a body, once it talks. We've all seen Westworld, Blade Runner, Her, Data on Star Trek. The lesson from science fiction is when something looks like a person and acts like a person, it is irresistible not to see it as a person.
Let me turn with Paolo here to one other thing that's going on. In Silicon Valley, the talk and the language has moved from simple talk about engineering and optimization to actually talking about things in religious language. So Sam Altman has talked about ChatGPT as a magic intelligence in the sky, which sounds pretty godlike. Even in Christian tradition, there's this idea of transhumanism among some, which is that if we can make humans better by using technology, we should do that. God wants us to progress and become better. And then, of course, there's the Peter Thiel view, which is that it's our moral responsibility to make AI move forward, and anybody who's holding it back is holding progress back, and that's what the true Antichrist is. So, Paolo, you spend a good deal of time there. What's your sense of what tech execs are really thinking about AI in terms of its savior abilities?
Well, let me start from that. It was 2007. I was in Rome talking to a Jesuit that was my, my boss in terms of my PhD. And I told him, look, I would like to study posthumanism and transhumanism connected to AI. He looked at me like I said, oh, you seem brilliant. You would like to waste everything. And now it's the main topics. Well, but this is ironically. But the thing is, I make my PhD on such topics, and I found that, there is a sort of error in such kind of reasoning. Is it any kind of technological intervention, an upgrading, or something that make us better? So, of course, we discover vaccination. We had to be vaccinated because this is something that makes us better. 2013, I was involved in an ethical discussion for a drugs. It was in New Orleans, and it was a big conference on that can give us the ability to not forget nothing. And the idea was, there was this man, I cannot say the company he was working for, he say, what is the major drugs that is sold illegally in the top colleges? It's Ritalin. Because the student can take it, can have a normal social life, and then can remember things and pass the grade. Make it legal. Let's make these drugs that allow you to not forget. I raised up my hand and I said, look, supposing that tomorrow you sell that drugs, and a young girl has a terrible experience. She gets raped. You are condemning her to remember such kind of traumatic moment with the same freshness, with the same immediate sensation for the rest of his life. Are you sure that forgetting is a defect of the human nature? So what is missing in posthumanism and transhumanism is such kind of question. Where we have a limitation is not a matter of a defected nature that we have to make better. Limits, in a geometrical perspective, it's a matter that gives you an identity. A circle is the limit of the space that produces such kind of identity. It's not a square. So the limit of the human beings is what allow us to remain humans. And what we deeply desire, also with such kind of technological intervention, is to remain human. Then, starting from the last century, a couple of centuries ago, we start to interpret religious category of end of history for a kind of solutionism that should simply remove suffering and pain that sometimes are connected to limits. It started a European man, the name was Karl Marx, and he simply said that revolution will fix any suffering, and it's the end of history. The solution that should be a solution after the history, religious category, enter inside the history and promise something that cannot happen. Now, Silicon Valley make the same things with technology. Technology will produce the end of history. No way that it happened. In that sense, is an heresy, if I have to talk as a theologian. So something that cannot happen due to the nature of the human beings.
Paul, you wanted to
I'm not an accelerationist, but it's too conservative for me. So I'll take.
I look like.
You had the locust. Be careful.
I had the locust. If I get more locusts, I will know I'm doing a mistake here. Which is, and you're not that. You spoke of vaccines, and in some way we face limits. And I would agree with you. A life without limits, there's sort of a hubris of the singularity and uploading our consciousness, which I actually find reasonably foolish. But cure for Alzheimer's, extending the human lifespan, curing people who are paralyzed, and so on.
This is recovering. It's not enhancing. If you have an Alzheimer, you are forgetting things, and you recover to a normal state. It's a different model. It's beyond the therapy, the problem.
Yes, but if I could be 100 years old and have the mental and physical acuity of a 20-year-old, I think that would be good.
But you was. We are not talking of achieving something that you haven't.
Fine. If my memory, as it were, could become better beyond any human memory. And in fact, in some way with our phones and our computers, we have an extension of it, but in my head, if my morality, my empathy, my intelligence could go beyond human scope, I think we need to think carefully. There are costs and benefits of these things. Extreme intelligence, unconstrained by some moral control, could lead to extreme cruelty. But I think you have to calculate the cost benefits. But I think in some cases, going beyond the way humans have gone could be a good thing.
It depends. It depends.
Yeah.
We have to talk about
I think
it depends.
It depends. Is it good enough?
Is it good enough?
the idea of debate, I think, is an important one that you're landing on. And one problem that I worry about with AI entering the spiritual realm is we're a society that loves optimization, right? We fetishize optimization. If AIs are out there trying to zero in on the best answer, and the question is, how do we define the best answer? Are we going to be utilitarians, or are we going to be, then we can debate what that is. But let's say it zeroes in on one answer to moral dilemmas. Is that loss of heterogeneity a problem? There's this notion in Judaism that the Torah doesn't exist in heaven, it's in our mouths. And what that means is the community gets to decide. And I know, Elizabeth, you've talked about this a lot. That is, sometimes the answer to theological questions is found in the debate and in the struggle. And so do you worry that with AI, if it starts to give moral answers and people find it as authoritative, is we're going to lose the pluralism that we might have otherwise?
It's not top of my list of worries.
Okay, what is top of your list of worries?
That we are already... Okay, I'm going to swerve a little bit.
Okay.
We are surrounded by dying trees, right? It's 38 degrees in London. My children can't go to school. I'm worried that we've made a really big bet. We haven't. A small group of mainly men have made a really big bet that increased efficiency and some good things, curing cancer, making a lot of money, speeding everything up, is worth accelerating a warming planet. That we have a technology that might kill us, apparently by becoming conscious, they seem very relaxed about that, or it might kill us because we will burn up, right? And the goods that are being offered in exchange do not feel to me to be, on the existential scales, worth it. And I think that's a spiritual point, because life is at the center of so many of our wisdom traditions, because all healthy spiritualities say we are interconnected. We are interconnected with each other and this world. That we are called to be stewards and protected, to bear the responsibility, to not be greedy, to not see this world as something to be asset stripped, but as a gift to be received with thanksgiving and shared. And we can argue the points of the models and how you train them and what answers they spit out to you, but the very heart of the technology feels to me to be like life-threatening and heart-threatening and soul-threatening at a level that, honestly, in this place, I feel like we are in some kind of magical thinking denialism. Oh, that's me being very honest in response to your question.
Fair enough. We're going to move to Q&A in 1 second. But before we do that, either Paolo or Paul, one of the great things about, I think, the world's spiritual traditions is this idea of pluralism, where we debate together and find answers. Do you worry about homogenizing our morality if AI becomes the source of moral guidance for people?
I have mixed feelings. Certainly, I'm not the expert here, but I don't associate religion with moral pluralism. I often associate it with almost more moral realism, to put it positively. Won't use the word dogmatism. But
You're not offendable. You can go for it.
But dogmatism. But pluralism is good when it's good to be pluralist. When it comes to the question of the morality of slavery, I don't want pluralism. I don't think we benefit from the full airing of all the logically possible views, of which we then cheerfully explore, and never settle on something. So in some way, if AI becomes, assume AI becomes morally wise in some way, better, more wise than us, which maybe isn't so hard, and it says, for instance, stop factory farming. There's no question about it. Stop factory farming. Billions of animals suffer horribly for a pleasure that could easily be dispensed with. It is wrong, and you should stop it. Maybe we shouldn't jump and say, oh yeah, but let's find another AI that'll say the opposite.
Fair enough, but if you look at the effective altruist, that's what they were trying to do, right? Utilitarianism is the biggest goal. And how do we define that? How do we decide on that? And so I worry in some sense that...
I think the effective altruists are doing the Lord's work, so to speak.
Okay.
If I can jump in as a
come back to that.
Moral philosopher, the problem is that ethics is not based on belief. Ethics is based on reason. It's really clear in any tradition.
Well, and feeling too, as Elizabeth said, the body plays a role.
Well, but you have to be able to articulate in a reasonable way the things that you would like to have as a normative things. And this is the clear difference, And it was clear in the Christian tradition, clearly stated, at least from 13th century with St. Thomas of Aquinas. No one was back. And it was made acquiring the Aristotelian vision of ethics. But not all the mental scheme that we used to answer are really workable. Let's back to this effective altruism, That is an extreme form of utilitarianism.
Yeah.
There is this really interesting book, 1974, Utilitarianism, Pro and Against, For and Against. Well, there is a brilliant argument inside. Supposing that you are on a boat, Germany 1934, and a man is drawing. Should you save him? An utilitarianist or effective altruist way? Say yes. Well, if this man is Hitler, you can save 6 million people. Let's think about it. Is it the father of Hitler? Is it the grandfather? So this model that told us that we can sacrifice X generation to save more people later, don't give us the core answer. How much is too much?
Yeah.
And this has to be achieved in another way. That is the ontological way. That is a reasonable way.
Or what is the quantity to optimize? If they're alive but not living well, is that worth it?
It's fascinating. 1974 they wrote it because that gives us the sense that we can calculate it.
I think we are unfortunately out of time, but we'll be around if you want to ask us any questions, but thank you for coming. How God Works is hosted by me, Dave DeSteno. Our senior producer is Josie Holtzman. Our producer is Sophie Eisenberg. Our associate producers are Emmanuel Desarme and Cleo Levin. Executive producer is Genevieve Sponsler. Our fact checker is Natsumi Ajisaka. Merritt Jacob is our mix engineer and composed our theme, which was arranged by Chloe DeSteno. The executive producer of PRX Productions is Jocelyn Gonzalez. This podcast was made possible with support from the John Templeton Foundation. To learn more about the show and access episode transcripts, you can find our website at howgodworks.org. And for episode shorts, extras, and my ruminations on science and spirituality, check us out on Instagram at howgodworkspod. And you can also see all of our episodes along with special bonus show material on our YouTube page at howgodworkspod.